She did not just use her daughter. She turned her into money-making machine, piece by piece, day by day, until the girl stopped believing she was human and started believing she was money. Mommy Grace lived in Loma village, a place of red earth roads and small houses made of mud and zinc. People knew her face. They knew her loud voice and her sharp tongue. They also knew she loved comfort more than kindness. When her husband, Daddy Grace, was alive, life was easier for her. He farmed early, returned late, and placed money in her hands. She never asked how tired he was. When Daddy Grace died after a short illness, the house became quiet. The village women came to cry with her, but Mommy Grace's tears dried quickly. After the burial, she packed away her black clothes and began to think of only one thing: how to continue living without lifting her own hands. That was when she turned fully to her daughter, Grace. Grace was 15, slim, and gentle. Her eyes were always alert, like someone expecting trouble. From the first week after her father's death, Mommy Grace changed. She stopped calling Grace by her name. She called her girl. Before the sun rose, Mommy Grace kicked Grace's mat. "Wake up," she said. "The house is dirty." Grace swept until dust covered her face. She fetched water twice before morning. When she returned tired, Mommy Grace shouted again. "Is that how your mates work?" If Grace moved slowly, Mommy Grace pinched her ear. If food burned, she poured it away and told Grace to start again. Hunger became normal for Grace. Pain became normal. Silence became her shield. By the second month, Mommy Grace stopped cooking completely. Grace cooked, cleaned, washed clothes, and still went to sell groundnuts in the evening. Mommy Grace sat on a stool, chewing cola nuts, watching her. When Grace returned late, Mommy Grace searched her body. She checked her pockets. "You stole my money," she often said, even when nothing was missing. Slaps followed. Words followed. "You are useless. You are slow. You will die poor like your father." Grace cried into her mat at night, careful not to make noise. Mommy Grace's greed grew stronger. She began sending Grace to clean houses far away. If Grace returned with small money, Mommy Grace beat her with a broom. One night, she locked Grace outside till morning. When Grace begged for school, Mommy Grace laughed loudly. "School is for children with parents," she said. "You work for me." Grace stopped dreaming. One market day, Mommy Grace noticed something. People liked Grace. Buyers gave her extra coins. A thought entered Mommy Grace's mind, dark and sharp. "She can bring more," she said to herself. That night, Mommy Grace walked beyond Loma village to meet a man people feared. He asked for a white fowl, a red gown Grace once wore, and a chameleon that had never walked on soil. Mommy Grace agreed without shaking. From that day, Grace's suffering doubled. Mommy Grace forced Grace to sell late into the night. She took every money. She fed Grace once a day. Grace's body grew weak. Her smile disappeared. When she fell sick, Mommy Grace dragged her to the roadside anyway. "Money first," she said. Grace fainted one night. Mommy Grace poured water on her face and shouted until she stood. Uncle Emmanuel, Daddy Grace's brother, returned to Loma that same week. He asked about Grace. People avoided his eyes. One evening, he saw a thin girl selling by the road, shaking with tiredness. When she lifted her face, he knew her. "Grace," he said softly. She almost collapsed. Uncle Emmanuel followed her home. He watched Mommy Grace count money. He saw the marks on Grace's arms. He said nothing that night. But inside him, something burned. Uncle Emmanuel did not sleep that night. He sat outside the small room where Grace lay on a mat. Her breathing was weak. He remembered his brother, Daddy Grace, and the promise he once made to him: "If anything happens to you, I will protect your child." The next morning, Mommy Grace woke Grace before dawn. Grace could barely stand. Her legs shook as she tied the tray to her head. Uncle Emmanuel stepped forward. "She will not go today," he said calmly. Mommy Grace laughed, loud and sharp. Who are you to tell me what to do in my own house? She is sick, Uncle Emmanuel replied. Mommy Grace's face changed. She grabbed Grace by the arm and pushed her forward. If she dies on the road making money, she said. Not in my house eating my food. People nearby heard. No one spoke. That day was worse than the others. Mommy Grace followed Grace to the market. She stood close, watching every sale. If Grace rested, Mommy Grace pinched her waist. If she drank water, Mommy Grace slapped her hand. Smile, she whispered angrily. If you don't sell, you don't eat. Grace smiled until her face hurt. By afternoon, Grace collapsed again. This time, Mommy Grace did not rush to help. She shouted. Stand up. Are you acting? Uncle Emmanuel pushed through the crowd. He carried Grace in his arms. Her body felt too light. That evening, he took her to the clinic. The nurse was angry. This child is being worked like an animal, she said. She will die if this continues. Uncle Emmanuel nodded. His decision was clear. When he returned Grace home, Mamie Grace was waiting. She demanded the day's money. Uncle Emmanuel placed some money on the table. You will stop this, he said. Or I will involve the elders. Mommy Grace laughed again. Elders. For a lazy girl. She raised her hand to hit Grace. Uncle Emmanuel caught her wrist. That night, Mommy Grace locked Grace inside a small storeroom. No food. No water. Grace cried until her voice was gone. The next morning, Uncle Emmanuel went from house to house. He spoke to the elders. He spoke to women. He spoke to men. Slowly, anger spread. That evening, the elders came. Mommy Grace shouted. She denied everything. Then Grace spoke. Her voice was weak but clear. I work every day. I sleep hungry. I am beaten when money is small. I want to go to school. I want to live. The elders were silent. Mommy Grace fell to her knees, crying. Then she stood and cursed Grace. The head elder spoke. This child will live with her uncle. Mommy Grace screamed. Uncle Emmanuel packed Grace's few clothes. As they walked away, Mommy Grace shouted, You will regret this. Grace did not look back. Uncle Emmanuel's house was small, but it was calm. On the first night Grace slept there, no one shouted her name. No one kicked her mat. She slept for a long time. The next morning, she woke up slowly. Food was already on the table. She stared at it, afraid to touch it. Eat, Uncle Emmanuel said gently. Her hands shook as she ate. No one rushed her. No one counted coins. For the first time in many months, Grace felt safe. Days passed. Grace rested. The nurse visited. Her body slowly gained strength. Her eyes still carried fear, but it reduced each day. Uncle Emmanuel registered her back in school. On her first day, she cried quietly when she was given books. She was not lazy. She learned fast. Teachers noticed. Back in Loma village, Mommy Grace waited for money that did not come. 1 day passed. 2 days passed. Her wrapper became old. She sold her jewelry. She started doing small work for people. People whispered. Where is your daughter? They asked. Mommy Grace lied. She ran away, she said. But the truth was louder than her voice. One afternoon, Mommy Grace went to Uncle Emmanuel's house. She looked smaller. Her voice was low. I want my child, she said. Uncle Emmanuel looked at her. You want your worker, he replied. Grace stood behind him. Her heart beat fast. Mommy Grace cried. I was wrong, she said. Grace listened. She remembered the hunger, the beatings, the nights outside. Grace spoke. I forgive you, she said softly. But I will not come back. Mommy Grace fell to the ground. No one lifted her. Years passed. Grace grew into a strong young woman. She helped children who worked too hard. She spoke to mothers. Mommy Grace lived quietly. She worked with her hands. Time did not treat Mommy Grace gently. Without Grace, her life lost its easy flow. She woke early now, not to shout orders, but to work. She fetched water for others. She washed clothes for small pay. Her hands, once soft, became rough. When sickness came, there was no child to sit by her mat. People in Loma village stopped greeting her warmly. Mothers pulled their children closer when she passed. Some whispered. Others said nothing, but silence itself became heavy. Many nights, Mommy Grace sat alone and remembered. She remembered kicking a mat. She remembered counting money while a child cried. She remembered choosing money over mercy. Regret did not bring Grace back. Grace's life moved forward. She finished school. She learned tailoring. She helped children who worked on the streets. When she spoke, people listened. Her story became a lesson, not a rumor. When mothers complained about hardship, Grace said gently, "Poverty is hard, but cruelty is worse." She never spoke with hate. Years later, Mommy Grace came again, older and weak. She knelt before Grace. "I destroyed my own home," she said. "Do not be like me." Grace helped her stand. "I forgave you long ago," Grace replied. "But forgiveness does not erase lessons." Mommy Grace nodded. She finally understood. She returned to Loma and told the women her story. She warned them. "Do not turn your children into tools," she said. "A child is not money. A mother's hands are meant to protect, not to profit." When greed replaces love, children break, families fall, and regret arrives too late. Every child deserves care, rest, and dignity. Mothers who raise their children with cruelty plant pain that will one day return to them. Love is the only wealth that never destroys its owner. If this video add value to you, please do well to give me a like, share, and comment on the video to share your thoughts. Most importantly, please support me by subscribing to this channel, turn on the notification button and follow for more interesting stories. Thanks for watching.